Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We will get started in about 1 minute, but before we start, I have a quick admin announcement. This session has been pre-qualified to support continuing education requirements for several cybersecurity certifications. If you're an AFCEA member seeking attendance documentation, please be sure to scan your badge at the scanner located in the back of the seating area at the conclusion of this session. Scanners will not open until 5 minutes before the session ends and shut off 15 minutes post-session, so please get your badge scanned before networking with the speakers. Also note that to qualify for CEUs or CPEs, the session must run a full 60 minutes. That 60 minutes can include Q&A, so please have questions ready for the speakers to fill the time requirement. Full details on the continuing education program are available in the TechNet Cyber app. Thank you, and now over to our supporting partner to introduce the panel.
Good morning, everyone. First, I would like to welcome you to TechNet Baltimore. This is exciting. I'm really glad that you chose Theater 6 for your first session. Hi, Sharon. Let's see. So I am Kelly Miller. I am the Vice President of Program Operations for our defense sector at Mantech, and I also run our DISA and Fourth Estate business. I'm very excited to introduce you to the first session. We have an amazing group of individuals here to discuss applying analytics for both user experience to maintain a decisive advantage. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator today, Raj Shah, for this discussion. Raj is the current director of DISA's Engineering Directorate and CXO. He is the principal advisor to the agency on enterprise engineering and leads the directorate to support DISA operations with a focus on end-user experience through end-to-end engineering and governance across the agency. Please join me in welcoming Raj.
Good morning. Everybody's awake? Thank you for joining us bright and early. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Sorry about that. Please help me to welcome our really across the board from agency, top-notch people from agency to looking after the user experience and really looking towards the experience of the DoD. So first, let me introduce to welcome panel member, Brigadier General Cornell, who is the Vice Director of DISA G6 and has one of the, I would say, hardest job. I know Sharon has the main job, but he has one of the toughest job to take care of entire Pentagon and NCR area. So that's Brigadier General Cornell. We have a Chief Master Sergeant Eger, who is looking at the warfighter perspective. How can we help warfighter what they need? Mike Butler, who also serves the Tech Director for DISA G6 Global Services. Then we have Chris Reading. He is our Services Director, Tech Director. And then we have Dave McCarthy, who looks at the defensive side of G357, we call. Now we are J-Code. So please welcome them. We'll go in a round-robin fashion, ask a bunch of questions. Before we do that, I have few things to just recap from the last time. I hope this time there won't be any fire alarm. If you want to pull it, please pull it now. That's an old joke because last panel we were there. Somebody pulled a fire alarm right at this point. So I just want to make sure that I give people a chance to pull the fire alarm before we go further. This was the 2024. If you remember, we talked about our journey towards the digital engineering, how we want to transform the user experience, and what we would like to do. So again, as this was the recap, if you remember this slide, before we got fire alarm, as I stated before, and where we are in this journey right now on 2025. So this is a, DISA just not deliver the services, but it delivers the experience for the warfighter. This is not about just looking at the silos of excellence that I call, if you remember 2024 slide, where I have shown the silos of excellence, even though the user experience still wasn't great. So this is a critical resource to the joint forces. A poor user experience is the loss of the really a lethality for our warfighters. As you heard, the entire secretary our director talks about it. The lethality is very, very important, and we don't want the time wasted to the warfighter by fixing IT. We want them to concentrate on a mission. So this is a user experience side, but that the benefit about using the user experience managing on a all end-to-end, just not looking at the network flow data, but also looking at the endpoint data and then mixing them with the user sentiment, because user sentiment could be different than what the real experience looks like. So that's why you don't want to spend the resources if you don't need to. And what another side benefit of that is, by monitoring end to end, it should help you to drive our investment strategy in the future and transform DISA from service level agreement organization to experience level agreement organizations. As you know, most of the industry partners are right here. So our really main reason here to not offer the system and services monitoring, but really looking at the perspective of the user, how we can transform and deliver the time, which is a precious resource that you cannot ever get back the time. So warfighter can get time back. As you know, DISA's mission is constantly expanding, and we want to make sure that we are ahead of it with automation and other areas to really deliver better experience with the same amount of resources. So we said that I'm going to go in a round robin fashion, and the first question I'm going to ask, General Cornell, how are you doing, sir?
I'm well, thanks.
As a top service provider to many DoD customers, including Pentagon, how do you think about generating AI and chatbots in terms of contributing to readiness and UX?
So let me first say good morning, and a couple folks have approached me before the panel. Rumors of my impending departure are not greatly exaggerated, right? So I am retiring at the end of this month, and my replacement, Brigadier General Frank Dominguez, is here to get to know folks and learn the portfolio. So please come up and introduce yourselves. Go easy on Frank, but he comes with a wealth of experience, and we're excited to have him taking the reins here at the end of the month. So welcome, Frank. So Sharon Woods, the J6 director, and I are responsible for the user experience across not only the Pentagon reservation, but much of the NCR and many of the defense agencies to whom we provide endpoint services. And there's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to AI chatbots in that environment, right? Because a big part of my daily responsibilities are to make sure that the secretary, the chairman, the joint chiefs, the undersecretaries, that they have what they need to execute the mission and to execute it timely, right? So they are not a category of users who are typically going to use an AI chatbot to solve their own IT break-fix issues. But the danger in looking at it that way is just because the VIP is not the person putting in the ticket doesn't mean there's not a VIP impact. So Mr. Tyler Stevens is here. He runs our global service desk, and we do a lot of what we call tier 0 self-help that employs some chatbots. But as Tyler and I tell the team all the time, you might have a major or lieutenant colonel who's building a briefing book for the secretary or the deputy or the chairman, and although they're not a VIP themselves, the impact of their IT issue is VIP impacting, right? So I think there is a place for AI chatbots in our business, and we do use them. I think the key, is just like it is in private industry. We've all, whether you've called your cell provider, your cable provider, if that chatbot is not efficient and it keeps you in an endless loop of repetitive questions and answers, then it's not what we need, right? We need in the Department of Defense a chatbot that can get you either to an automated solution quickly or in the hands of a live technician quickly, right? And I think when we talk later in this panel about readiness and lethality and modernization, I think there's a lot of things that AI can do for us, not only in terms of chatbots, but in terms of also the back-end network infrastructure and the endpoints themselves to help speed that process, so that when you call and you're greeted by a chatbot, that chatbot already knows what your problem is and how to fix it. So I think there's certainly a place for it. Our mission set is a little bit different given some of the senior leaders that we support, but we're certainly employing it now and looking to employ it more in the future.
Thank you. So that answers the, I would say, end user perspective for user experience. I'm going to go 180 towards warfighter perspective. So Chief Master Sergeant, could you provide your input and a relationship between lethality as a mindset and warfighter's user experience, and how you see that as agency we move forward?
Yes, sir. So good morning. So let's expand a little bit about this concept of lethality as a mindset. Not only do our capabilities need to be dynamic and responsive, but so do our people. And honestly, we have great people, and our collective strength comes from leveraging their creative and proactive approaches to delivering dynamic and responsive effects. And this concept of lethality is broader than our IT service provider teams. It also applies to those warfighters who use our services to achieve their mission outcomes. And so think about airmen on the flight line uploading maintenance data that supports aircraft readiness diagnostics, or soldiers and Marines on the ground coordinating with sailors at sea. So as you can see, that's how the pieces fit together, is from a warfighter perspective to execute mission in a lethal format. But I want to shift your mind a second. So oftentimes service members are invited to join the world's finest fighting force, only to be disappointed by the state of basic IT capabilities and services. Depending on the location a service member is assigned, it can take up to 3 weeks after arrival in garrison to have basic email and system access established. Many installations have antiquated pipes, resulting in degraded network speeds and to include dark GSM signal areas, particularly in housing, dormitory, and shopping areas. And a lot of our service members come from occupations where they have access to state-of-the-art IT devices and services, right? And so they expect more. Then there's the challenge of platform selection and platform utilization and collaboration, particularly when working with joint partners and allies. An example of this was in 2021, I was the command chief at Al Udeid out in Qatar, and during the execution of Operation Allies Refuge. And as you can imagine, it was a very, very dynamic environment. Coordinating facets of joint interagency, intergovernmental, non-governmental, and multinational entities together to execute their respective mission required reliable, interoperable, and secure communications. And if we don't have a product or platform that we can deploy and employ, members will end up reverting back to what they know and is most convenient. And of course, there's always the challenge of balancing budget limitations with evolving needs in IT modernization and cybersecurity. And maintaining legacy systems, it obviously is not ideal, but the procurement processes are often complex, and delivery is oftentimes late to need. There is one variable, though, that is constant, and that variable is time. That variable is constant for us, for those we serve, and for our adversaries. And so we can't make up more time, or we can't buy time back. What we can do is make the most effective use of the time we have. When the warfighter is focused on his or her IT capabilities, or is frustrated in his or her user experience, that warfighter is wasting time when they could be better focused on mission, on being dynamic and responsive. From a service provider perspective, we are lethal when we continuously improve the warfighter's user experience. From a cyber defense perspective, we are lethal when we proactively and dynamically frustrate any potential nefarious actor. We, in effect, deny, degrade, defeat, and ultimately deny, degrade, disrupt, and ultimately defeat the nefarious actors' user experience within our domain.
Thank you, Chief. Really appreciate. So as we move forward with lethality, continuous modernization, DISA is the global organization, as everybody knows. And Mike, as a technical director for the looking at the global footprint, can you give me some of your ideas or the challenges that why industry should integrate or better integrate their tools and services so you can incorporate AI and analytics inside so you can deliver the endpoint services, really a good endpoint side of things. So then we can figure it out rest of the other areas like long haul transport or services or the delivery of a software better.
Yeah, absolutely. And good morning, everyone. A big part of what we focused on the last few years is DoDNet, right? So DoDNet is an organization, or I'm sorry, a program where we're talking out managing multiple enclaves, right, from different DAFA organizations and making sure that they operate as one global network. So when we talk about that global footprint and being able to go ahead and have multiple enclaves and bringing them into one environment, we really want to focus on interoperability, right? That is a big factor that we want to consider when we're talking about managing a global footprint. That interoperability is important because it takes the ability for us to go ahead and take all these different technologies, make them be able to talk to one another, vendor to vendor agnostic, being able to go ahead and have a partnership between obviously the legacy technologies that the Chief Master Sergeant mentioned, and also obviously modern technologies as well. The big thing also is making sure that when we talk about the interoperability is how we bring the AI capabilities into that. Obviously, when we talk about interoperability with legacy tools and modern tools, AI is obviously a footprint where we're trying to modernize as much as possible. But that interoperability capability is really important to make sure that when we bring those tools in, we're not spending a lot of time trying to train new organizations or new people into those new technologies. We want to be able to focus on the mission and then reduce the amount of time needed for training on those new models, on the machine learning that's needed, obviously, in order to train the AI models. We also want to make sure that when we spend or reduce the amount of time that's needed for that training, we're taking that opportunity to bring on the services that are migrating into that DoDNet capability as well. So a big part of taking that modernization and that analytical capability is being able to sorry, I lost my train of thought. Being able to take the cloud, the AI models, and being able to go ahead and
Include that in our
yes,
overall
the
experience.
analytical capabilities that we're looking at, right, for the AI models, and being able to make sure that when we reduce the amount of time that's training that's needed, we're looking at being able to interject the lethality that's needed in order to bring the capabilities up to speed faster. So that's a big part of expanding our global footprint, taking that AI capability, reducing the amount of time it takes to integrate those capabilities, but also reducing the amount of time it brings to bring people up to speed on those capabilities. And then as we expand and have more services that are coming online, we take the training needed as well as the readiness that's needed as well, and then focus our attention on those.
Thank you. So as you have to rely on the services that is like joint tenant, an example by Chris Reading's services directorate. So Chris, I would like to ask you a question. How the agile industry partnership that can, as a scale, again, the word is scale, but scale is a later part. First, you need to have something that you can deliver. You can scale later. You have to keep that in mind overall. But so as an enterprise service provider, take an advantage of AI and data analytics to better respond the environment and the warfighter to demand the changes that is happening in the network and user experience side.
Yeah, thanks, Raj. So I want to take this from two different angles real quick. The first one, really, how do we make sure that we're revolutionizing the way that we deliver software to the department, right? The capabilities that AI and machine learning can help us with in our development pipelines, in the way that we do DevSecOps, in the way that we evaluate the security posture of our systems, in the way we evaluate whether or not we're meeting the mission critical needs, the requirements that the warfighter has for enterprise services, right? All of those are ways that we can leapfrog the time it takes us now to go through the entire process from requirements definition through capability delivery. As we work through things like DevSecOps and taking advantage of some of the analytics we can get with all of that data we have about our software delivery pipelines, and say, how do we do it faster? How do we get through the ATO process faster? How do we get through the testing processes faster? Right now, we have complications where we are developing software quickly, and then we are lagging in the process from software, hands-off keyboard to into the hands of the warfighter. And so really, we need to leverage AI and machine learning and all of these capabilities in the pipelines and the way that we deliver software and the way that we are developing in order to make sure we can make our warfighters lethal when they need it and deliver on time. On the other hand, as we're delivering these capabilities, we need to think about how can we revolutionize the way that the software works for the warfighter? How can we put these AI capabilities into the hands of the warfighter, especially the young warfighters that grew up using or starting to grow up using this technology? We cannot lag behind in delivering that capability to them. And so whether it's in my business systems and contract writing systems, or it's in my C2 warfighting systems, there's a lot of opportunity for us to revolutionize our business processes. I'll give an example. We're currently working through one of our C2 systems, I won't name which one, and we rebuilt a 30-year-old process, basically step by step into a new technology stack, right? Modern technology stack that's going to give us the flexibility to pivot and make sure that we're able to continuously modernize and continuously deliver capability, but we failed, honestly, in the how do we actually improve the process for the warfighter, right? How do we not just take back and say, what is your requirement, and then deliver that requirement without saying, tell me what is your objective, and then let me tell you how we can use modern technology to help the warfighter achieve their strategic objective. Get the warfighter away from the processes that slow them down and get them into the processes that achieve their strategic objective and make them lethal, right? This is where we need to be focusing, and then we need industry's partnership, right? We got a lot of smart guys and gals on the government team, but we can't do it without industry. And so industry really needs to help us say, hey, there's a better way to go about achieving this objective, and here's some opportunities that maybe we can take advantage of, and that we, the government, the service provider, and you and industry partners can come back and say, hey, requirement owner, if we do it this other way, we can deliver faster, and then hey, you can operate faster, and you can get away from the minutia of some of what you do day to day and focus on what are your mission objectives and how do you accomplish them.
Thank you, Chris. So as you know, I stand on those 4 legs of stools, I call it, and they are the pillar on that. And so we have this 4 organizations providing the services. Now, Dave, who is working with current ops and DCO, I understand our cyber director provide the tools, but that's kind of a long-term view. But when you are talking about user experience, you are fighting current war, not the future war only. You are, of course, trying to improve the future experience, but at the same time, you are finding current war. And DCO plays big part on that and how he can work with current ops. So, Dave, I would like to understand your perspective, right? As he's an endpoint service user experience kind of provider, services provider, then you are on a DCO side. Can you help me to understand how all this together with analytics, applying on top of that, to integrate cybersecurity and make us more lethal and powerful so enemy can't have the good day? And if you have some perspective on that, that would be great.
Yes, thank you, sir. So I think that artificial intelligence will increase our lethality to help us disrupt adversary activity on our network as we secure, operate, and defend our operational environment to enable our warfighter to deliver the effects they need to in their domains. So, sir, I'm going to break my answer into three broad categories of technology, people, and data. So from the technology aspect, I would say we don't need any more tools that are specifically artificial intelligence oriented. What we need is self-service, and when I say we, I mean the DCO community, our real-time analysts, our fusion analysts, our technology integrators. We need self-service analytics and frictionless prompting. So what I mean by that is we need artificial intelligence built into our SIEM or SIM. We need it built into our TIP, our threat intelligence platform. So think of how Copilot is now integrated in Excel products. We need it right there in the tool that the analysts operate in where they can take advantage of it. So that leads me to my next point is the analysts have to have the training and the ability to use the capability. Do those analysts, do they have the knowledge, skills, and background to ask the correct questions of the AI? In other words, I think they call that nowadays prompt engineering skills to get the correct answers and insights if we believe our AI is good enough. We're going to need to upscale our users, in other words, so that they really become effective at using artificial intelligence. And I can tell you, audience and Mr. Shaw, that we are now using our government IL5 rated artificial intelligence to increase our ability to do analytics on the data in our repository, to craft Splunk queries, to write effective codes for our cloud-based isolated and browsing capability. I also think that as artificial intelligence begins to permeate our society, that the young people coming in will be more facile and be able to have better prompt engineering skills as they arrive. Data, we have to have the governance in place so that the users have they know the context, they know how to ask the appropriate question, and then they know how to get the appropriate answer. Also, we need the governance in place to prevent leakage. Where do those questions go? So we need our artificial intelligence models to be fenced off and make sure that our questions aren't providing indicators to our adversaries on what we're trying to do or figure out. So we need frictionless access with AI built into our tools and a governed data architecture. So in other words, whose intellectual property is training the model and where do our questions go? And the last point I'd like to make on the human aspect, cycling back to that, is we'll always need a human in the loop because we'll need a human to interpret the artificial intelligence response. They should be familiar enough with our environment, our data, and our response to answer yes/no questions or, proceed. Do we want? So you have this capability that's so smart, we may not know how it arrived at an answer. But our analysts who are they need to be in the loop to say, yes, we're going to say a countermeasure, we're going to implement this countermeasure right this second, or no. We'd be taking perhaps a large risk to go with a 100% automated response. So, sir, that concludes my remarks on this question.
Yeah, you want to add anything, Chris?
Yeah, Dave, you just triggered me thinking about a couple things when you were talking, especially about the data piece, right? I think as we're developing these capabilities that provide what you need from the DCO perspective, we really need to be thinking about data tagging and data labeling, right? And industry, as you're helping us develop these tools, we need to make sure that we have the right data tagging and labeling in place as we collect the data, as we put it in place, so that we can train the models, so that we can pull metrics on what's actually working, and then iteratively evolve what we're doing and how we're providing the capability so that Dave's team can deliver that defensive cyber operations they need.
Yeah, so thank you for that. And that leads me to ask all of you if you want to add anything. But like, what your thoughts that how can industry, generative AI, anything can help us to advance director's priority, right? Readiness, campaigning, continuous modernization, and establishing lethality, and any challenges you anticipate, as I think Chris talked about one, data labeling, but how can be a force multiplier. And this is the reason you can understand why I'm looking at end-to-end, because everybody can be a really good silos of excellence, but user can be still suffering. So anybody have a thoughts or ideas that how industry can help us and generative AI or analytics can help us to move it forward faster?
Well, sir, I don't know that I have an idea for industry, but I did want to make a comment on how we're working with your group to combine our operational data, our network operations data, with our security relevant data. And if we could use AI to leverage that to quickly discern, do we have a faulty piece of equipment, or do we have a piece of equipment that's been tampered with by an adversary? And by combining those groups of data and tagging them and governing it properly and make sure that analysts aren't privy to data they shouldn't get, that should help us to come to a decision much more quickly. And we are beginning to head down that road right now. When we have outages, we are working closely with the ops side, but it'd be nice if we could do that and ask a artificial intelligence agent to, is this a legitimate fault with the equipment, or is this an adversary result of adversary activity?
Yeah, so to paint that further and make your life a little bit better eventually as a warfighter, is we are also planning to take the end point data that is coming from Mike Butler's and his entire PMO thing and overlap that to paint the total user experience. So that's another one that is in pipeline coming, right? That how we can integrate all sort of data and then paint a real picture, which is really closer. We did some minor pilot for O365 data, and we have seen some good positive result. So just so industry can aware of it, that is coming in the future. So go ahead, other people, anybody else? General Cornell.
Yeah, so from a service provider perspective, one of the things I was unprepared for in this job is just how much interaction that I have with senior department leadership, right? And so whether that's the Joint Chiefs, the Joint Staff, the combatant commands, and one common theme across all of those discussions that I've been fortunate to be privy to is that the key to the key to lethality, I think, it comes down to two things. One is interoperability, right? That is going to be extremely important, more so than it has been before in the next fight. And speed, right? So General Stanton and other senior leaders, I think put it well when they say that, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. But in order to be smooth, we need AI to help us get to the root of the problems that are keeping us from being interoperable and lethal, right? So I'll give you an example. We use a lot of AI and monitoring and metrics in the Pentagon network right now to inform our decisions about where we need to modernize, where we might need to upgrade a piece of hardware, et cetera. The next iteration of that would be for AI to tell us, hey, I see this switch is in a failed state. I already checked its power, I checked its firmware, I checked its certificates. All of those are good to go, and I already rebooted it. So I am calling a human to come take a look at it, and here's 2 or 3 things that I think it could be, but I'm unsure, right? That is a step beyond where we are now. We have plenty of monitoring to tell us that a device has lost power or that a device is no longer pushing traffic. But to take it to the next level would allow us to move more rapidly to fix those issues and to ensure the consistent and uninterrupted service that's going to be necessary for that interoperability in the next fight.
Yeah, thank you. And so we are taking those data and apply it in the decision making. I will give you an example. We started early phase that I talked about in a simulation modeling, throwing that data back into simulation modeling to look at what needs to be modernized. So we just made some decisions that these links to be modernized and these links you can reprioritize. So it drives our investment strategy for the agency. So Chief, you want to have?
Yes, sir. So I'll add a little bit of perspective from a warfighter. And so, you know, we fight and win wars by having organized, trained, and what's the third one? Equipped, right? Equipped personnel. Organized, trained, and equipped personnel. Industry partners make up nearly half of our combat power, and essentially your readiness is our readiness. So we don't need widgets. We need help solving functional problems. And so that's where we can use you. Thank you.
So on a functional problem, on providing the largest endpoint provider in the DoD, Mike, you want to add something?
Yeah, I think I want to touch on what Dave and General Cornell also mentioned about the tools, right? We have a lot of tools that are already in our tool belts today, right? We have a lot of sensor data that's out there. I think we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of what's, you know, the capabilities that are in place already. Going out and buying another tool doesn't necessarily always mean we're going to get some type of improvement because we added this capability. We want to make sure that we're going across the landscape and looking at all the sensors that are already out there to include the end user itself and the endpoint. Those are sensor points that are on the network that we can leverage, right? And so adding additional capabilities or buying another tool doesn't necessarily equal, hey, we're going to get what we need. We really need to make sure that we are looking across our entire network infrastructure from OCONUS, CONUS-based tool sets that exist today, and then maximizing the capabilities that already exist, right? Everything's pulling some type of log, every type of tool that's on there, from the switch that General Cornell mentioned, there's a log for that, right? All those capabilities, how do we make sense of it all the way from the tier 0 level down to end user, all the way back to the network infrastructure. So it's really important for us to maximize the data that is already in the environment and not necessarily make investments in new capabilities all the time, but just look at what we currently have in our infrastructure, look at how we go ahead and optimize that, and then that's where we get the benefits of all the data that we have in the environment, and then make sure that we can feed that into the necessary capabilities, the AIs, right, the analytical tool sets, and then make the smart business decisions based on that data that's already out there.
Yeah, and on that point, right, we don't want user as a sensor. And we have proven with Brigadier General Cornell and Pentagon and some of the other areas that using the sensor data, actually it was for performance, really. All the sensors were deployed for performance reason. And we have transformed that to also look at the cyber perspective. And it's coming very handy right now as you can speak, right? So on that note, go ahead.
Yeah. So you're right, Raj. We started using these tools to monitor performance. It's been great in terms of giving that sensing capability. In our environment in the Pentagon, if the customer is a sensor, it's a bad day for us, right? Because as I joke, you know, I sometimes stand in front of a 3-stars desk and it feels like I'm a second lieutenant all over again, explaining to them that I will get the network back up and running 5 minutes ago, right? And they're all very good to me. I'm joking, but it is that type of environment, and so when the customer is the sensor, you're already behind in executing the mission. But what I want to say about I've heard a lot about data in this conversation and in others. And as I close out, 3 decades of military service, I will leave you with this. Everywhere I go and we talk about data, no one talks about the fact that organizations across this department all tag data differently. They all define data differently. And that is something that we have to get after collectively with industry, because when we go into the next fight, if that data is not reconciled between 2 mission partners, you're not going to achieve the interoperability and the lethality that you need, right? And I'm not saying that we've been ignoring that problem, but I don't see a lot of, and I'm not a data scientist, I just stayed at a Holiday Inn last night, but I do think there are things we need to do to prepare for the fight in terms of getting after that as a department, if we really want to leverage data to the full extent that we're talking about here today.
At least on that note, I just want industry to be aware that Air Force and DISA are tagging the network data same way now. That's the first step. We are, I think, also very closer with Navy on that. Marines and Army, we have work to do. So that's where I will end that on that note. And Chris, you want to?
Yeah, I just want to take it a little bit different. I'm the lone guy in our acquisition organization here.
Yeah.
So I think it's critical for us to think about when we put an acquisition out, are we constraining what we're asking for? Now, with that being said, right, I'm not asking you guys to come back and gold plate everything and give us, the world, but we do need to understand, hey, where is our draft RFPs, whether we're doing the FAR based or we're doing something in OTA and we're going through the white paper process, where are we constraining ourselves in our ability to adapt and use these technologies, and what can we do better and what can we do cheaper, what can we do faster, to deliver the capability. And I think industry has a lot of experience there that they can help us really understand early in the process, how do we shape it correctly so that we're not running into contract problems after contract problems.
Or change orders.
Or change order, right? That's what I'm talking about. Problems as in change orders, not problems as in under delivery. How do we avoid all of these contract actions that take forever and slow us down on delivery? How do we identify those things early, and how do we make sure together we're shaping those contracts successfully so that we can deliver the capability we need to deliver?
And that's exactly the point. To the end, the note is here is working with across the organization. Sorry to be honest, but pushed acquisition organization to look at XLA-based delivery. So Sharon Woods or future of Mike Cornell, Butler doesn't have to deal with the change order, because you got to understand we have to take those requirements and their pinpoint and refine as a POs. You need to deliver a service-based contract, experience-based contract versus old SLA that my software worked in a lab. End of story. This is what you get, and that's where we need industry too also to look at that. If we are not XLA based, please deliver a contract based on XLA if we miss it. But that's on that note. If people have questions, please feel free to ask. I don't know how much time we have, but if anybody has a question, go ahead.
Good morning, panel. Real quick, one of the most frustrating user experience things I ever dealt with was when my endpoint was down and they told me to send them an email, and I can't because my endpoint's down. As you talk about chatbots in my first tier and my first touch, I see the same problem. My system's down, and you're asking me to engage with a chatbot I can't get to. So are we talking Alexas on people's desks? Are we talking kiosks? I'd like to hear what the panel thinks the future is, because if I'm broke and I can't get to the chatbot on my endpoint, what do I do?
Okay, I think Mike will take it, but I will tell you that no, we are not telling you to use a chatbot at that point. He has an endpoint monitoring solution, right? So that endpoint monitoring solution is going to tell us that your endpoint is down, right? Now, what we are working on is how can we generate that as an alert in ITSM, basically ServiceNow ticketing, so you don't even have to call it. We know ahead of time. That's why we are taking this organization to be proactive versus reactive. Because by the time you are down, we are already reactive. And that's the reason I changed the slide here. You are already on that red side. We are trying to stay on the left of the ticket. So go ahead, Mike.
No, I think you hit it. The automation is a big part of that, right? So being able to go ahead and automate from the sensor data that we got, right, from the endpoint, the service, the application, that information triggering a ticket or some type of alarm or some type of alert that lets us know that we have an issue on the network, or specifically even you have an issue on the network, is important. That's how we stay, to Roger's point, left of the overall problem. I think it's also important for us to bake in the capability for users to access support in multiple ways, right? So whether we're talking about, using flow-through type capabilities, right, things that are accessible to the internet, or being able to go ahead and have capabilities that you can access outside of just your GFE. Those things are important for us to examine and explore, so that when you are in a situation where your GFE is not, accessible, or you can't get into a standard NIPR, we can still bake in security, right? Conditional access type things. You can still also contact or get KBs, do tier 0 type support without having to necessarily have to interact with a person over the phone, or submit something on your own in order to get resolution. So we do want to push things down to the lowest level. Obviously, staying left as much as possible, being proactive. But there's also the ability for us to explore the capabilities that you guys can, end users can have that allow them to go ahead and do self-service as much as possible as well, right? Restoring things, services, applications, and programs that are needed in a quick fashion so that you don't necessarily have to wait for a response from a tier 2 or tier 3 support desk.
Thank you. That's end for this panel. Really appreciate everyone joining us this morning, and have a wonderful TechNet Cyber. And thank you, panel members, for your time.